Edgar Cayce. Attitudes and Emotions. Content. It's a reciprocal world. Love is giving. Desire. Sex and marriage. Give sex education before puberty. Training and guiding children. The ideal marriage. Home and career. Marriage and separation. Soulmates. Living the balanced holistic life. Fruits of the Spirit of Truth. Service is asked of everyone. Charity. Knowledge must be applied. Knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Faith and belief. Expectancy and optimism. Just try your very best. Sincerity and honesty. Joy and happiness. The spirit of harmony and cooperation. Inner peace. Contentment. Time, space, and patience. Patience is the most beautiful virtue. Self-control. Forgiving and forgetting. The smile of understanding. The ability to laugh. Humor. Companionship and loneliness. Friendship. Torments, trials, and temptations. Confusion and indecision. Few does power not destroy. Fear and worry. Anger. Vengeance and hate. Judging and fault-finding. Self-condemning. Vainglory. The suicidal urge. Think on these things. Attitudes and emotions. It's a reciprocal world. It has ever been and is, even in materiality, a reciprocal world. If you will be my people, I will be thy God, Jeremiah. If you would know good, do good. If you would have life, give life. If you would know Jesus, the Christ, then be like him. There is no life without death. There is no renewal without the dying of the old. What you do to others, you are doing to thyself. As you would that others should do to you, do you even so to them, is not merely a saying that has found ready utterance on the tongues of those who would have their way here and there. They are principles. If you would have love, you must show thyself lovely. If you would have friends, you must show thyself friendly. If you would have peace and harmony, forget self and make for harmony and peace in thy associations. So oft is the ego so enwrapped in self that it feels it will lose its importance, its place, its freedom. Yet to have freedom in self, give it. To have peace in self, make it give it. In the manner you do it unto the least of these you meet day by day, so you do it unto thy God, Matthew. In giving out you receive. In helping the discouraged you found courage. In helping the weak you became strong. As you condemn, so are you condemned. As you forgive, so may you be forgiven. As you do unto the least of thy brethren, so you do unto thy Maker. These as laws, as truths, are unfailing. And because he may oft appear slow in meting out the results of such activity, does not alter or change the law. Any error or a fault or a failure must be met. Each entity, each soul as himself, must pay to the last jot or tittle. As we seek, we find. As we knock, we are heard. If we are timid, if we are fearful, if we are overcautious in our giving out that hope which has sustained our own selves, then we grow weaker and more fearful ourselves. This is a spiritual law. For they that would have life, love, hope, faith, brotherly love, kindness, gentleness, mercy, must show these things in their relationships to those they meet in every walk of life. If you would be happy, it is the law, you must make others happy. You cannot know happiness unless you experience that you have brought happiness, hope, joy into the experience of another. As you give, so is it given. Only what you have given away do you possess. What you lose was never yours. What you gain is an opportunity. What you possess is not yours except as you use it in relationships to others, to your Maker, to your purpose, to your fellow man. As you forgive, you are forgiven. As you love, so are you loved. As you resent, so are you resented. This is law, physical, mental, spiritual. If you would create confidence in thyself, find and have confidence in others. See in thy fellow man, though he may be thy enemy, the motivating force or power or spirit you would worship in thy Maker. If you would be antagonized, then be antagonistic. Yes, in healing others one heals self. Minimize the faults of others, if you would have others minimize thy faults in thee. Magnify the virtues if you would have thy Father, thy God, magnify thy blessings, thy virtues in thy dealings with others. He that would be the greatest among you will be the servant of all. Luke. He that will humble himself shall be exalted. Know that you cannot expect others to be any more sincere with thee than thou art with thyself or others. As you would have mercy shown thee, you show mercy to those that even despitefully use thee. Quit finding fault with others and others will quit finding fault with you. What you sow, you reap. Remember, others will never mistreat you if you never mistreat someone else. For like begets like. They that would have cooperation must cooperate by the giving of self to that as is to be accomplished. Only that as you have taught to others do you come to comprehend thyself. It blossoms and grows to fruition in the lives of others. If you criticize, then you may expect to be criticized yourself. Love is giving. Question: what is the law of love? G. Iving. As is given in this injunction, love thy neighbor as thyself. As is given in the injunction, love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, thine soul, and thine body. Luke. That is the law of love. Giving in action without the force felt, expressed, manifested, shown, desired, or reward for that given. In love all life is given, in love all things move. In giving one attains, in giving one acquires. In giving love comes as the fulfillment of desire, guided, directed in the ways that bring the more perfect knowledge of application of self as related to the universal, all-powerful, all-guiding, all-divine influence in life, or it is life. Love is giving. Love grows. Love endures. Love forgiveth. Love understands. Love keeps those things rather as opportunities that to others would become hardships. Do not confuse affection with love. Do not confuse passion with love. Love is of God, it is creative, it is all-giving. When duty, love, and reason are one, then such consciousness approaches near that of the universal love that gave all that man might be one with that universal love. Let love be without dissimulation, that is, without possession, but as in the manner as he gave, love one another, even as I have loved you. Willing to give the life, the self, for the purpose, for an ideal. The reverse of love is suffering, hate, malice, injustice. Which is more real, the love manifested in the Son the Savior, for his brethren, or the essence of love that may be seen even in the vilest of passion? They are one. But that they bring into being in a materialized form is what elements of the one source have been combined to produce a materialization. Beautiful, isn't it? To live love is to be love. To be one with the Father is to be equal with the Father. Love healeth the wounded. It binds up the broken-hearted. It makes understandings where differences have arisen. For God is love. Love thine enemies, or those who would despitefully use you. Loving indifference is acting as if it had not been, disregarding as if it were not. Not animosity, for this only breeds strife. Greatest thought that comes to the mind to man, someone cares. Desire. Question: why was the entity a man or horseman in the Arabian incarnation? That would depend upon those desires as were made by the entity from its appearance in the previous incarnation, see? And finding, as it were, the opportunity in this particular period to enter in that capacity as had been desired, so the entity entered in as one who could fulfill that desire, for, as should be gained by all, desire brought the earth and the heavens into being from the all-wise Creator. so man, by his heritage to that creation, may bring through desire, whether of earthly, heavenly, spiritual, those things that they, the individual, the entity, must meet by creating, making, being that desire. Hence, as we find, all the various phases of changes as may be wrought in man's, or woman's activities. For by taking thought no man may add 1 cubit nor can, by taking thought, the head be changed 1 whit, yet desire, and the fathering and mothering of desire, may change a whole universe. For, from the desires of the heart do the activities of the brain, of the physical being shape that as would be created by same, see? He has given, as the man thinketh in his heart, so is he, Proverbs. Not that thinking takes place in the heart. For thinking is of the mind. Yet the flow, the impulse, the emotions in material things are activative through impulse of nature, of character, of purpose, of will. Desire. Desire is that impulse which makes for the activity of the mental body, whether the impulse is from that desire or the desire is produced by the environs that affect a physical organism, or that which arouses or attunes the spiritual or soul body to an activity. In the creating first of thought is the creating of the idea. In the creating of desire is the creating then of action. Now combine action, combine thought, and these become a reality in the physical plane and subject to the laws of physical existence. Yet the beginning, the conception, the inherent forces as are gained are not subject to finite or to material law, until those have become in a form where they become subject to same. When do they become subject to same? The same as in the seed of the pollen of a flower, of an atomic force, of a force as is seen manifested in the material world of the sex germ of male and female, the desire of each for each, and the thought transference of each. When this becomes in association one with another, there takes place that which in its growth becomes the manifested conception of material forces, remaining in the ethereal or cosmic forces until such does take place. See? Then we see how the physical law applies to the spiritual laws, and how spiritual laws apply to the physical conditions. One within another, each bearing its relation one with another, as the conception of idea, of desire, of will's forces, then beginning of the material law. Truly is there found that the desire must precede the action, and that directed thought becomes action in the concrete manner through each force that the spiritual elements manifest through. Biologically, man makes himself as an animal of the physical, with the desires that are as the instinct in animal for the preservation of life, for the development of species, and for food. These 3 are those forces that are instinct in the animal and in man. If by that force of will man uses these within self for the aggrandizement of such elements in his nature, these then become the material desires, or are the basis of carnal influences, and belittle the spiritual or soul body. Then, what is the basis of mental desire? The mental as an attribute is also of the animal, yet in man, with his intellect, the ability to make comparisons, to reason, to have the reactions through the senses, that are raised to the forces of activity such that they create for man the environs about him and make for change in hereditary influences in the experience of each soul. These are the gifts with that free will agent, or attributes of same, or mind is a development of the application of will respecting desire that has become in its essence used as a grace, the gift to give praise for that which it has applied in its experience. The heart is ordinarily considered the seat of life in the physical, while the will a motivative factor in the mental and spiritual realm. To be sure, these may be made one. But how? In that the will of self and the desire of the heart are selfless in the Christ consciousness. Even as he gave in the shadow of the day when the cross loomed before him on Calvary, when the desire of the heart and the will of self were made one. Desire, as first given, was in the motivating force that may separate or make the soul one with or separate from the whole, through the manifestations in the will. and it builds in that the spirit moves in the direction in which it is motivated by will and desire. Question: is it necessary to give up physical desires for spiritual development? Rather spiritualize physical desires as he did in the garden Gethsemane, offering himself for the world. Then thou must pass through same, making physical desire and the will of the Father as one. What separated spirit from its first cause, or causes good and evil? Desire. Desire. Hence desire is the opposite of will. Will and desire, one with the creative forces of good, brings all its influence in the realm of activity that makes for that which is constructive. Question: where does desire originate? Will. That which is carnal and that which is mental and that which is spiritual may be found in desire. For it builds and is that which is the basis of evolution and of life and of truth. It also takes hold on hell and paves the way for many that find themselves off therein. Will and desire are spiritual as well as carnal, as well as mental. The entity has in itself will, that knowledge, that understanding, with which the entity exercises its choice, to which it adds either for the satisfying or gratifying of self's emotions or self's desires, or for the magnifying and glorifying of the spiritual sources or help. These may be one, if the entity makes the hope, the desire of the body, the mind, the soul in accord. Yet the soul ever seeks to magnify or glorify the divine. Hence the constant warring that one finds in members body, mind, soul. Those are as the real of the shadows of appetites, of desires, of those things that are habits of body and that take hold as a habit. Yet who ever saw a habit? For it is a mental thing. Habit and desires are akin. Habit is a physical reaction to the senses of the body, while desire is both mental, physical, and spiritual. Question: to what development must the soul reach before it may first find lodgment in the flesh? Desire for flesh. As man's concept came to the point wherein he walked not after the ways of the Spirit, but after the desires of the flesh, sin entered, that is, away from the face of the Maker, see? And death then became man's portion, spiritually, see? For the physical death existed from the beginning, for to create one must die, see? As has been given of old, when the children of Israel stood with the sons of the heathen, Daniel, and all ate at the king's table, that which was taken that only exercised the imagination of the body as physical desires, as strong drink, strong meats, condiments. From what may anyone be saved? Only from themselves, that is, their individual hell. They dig it with their own desires. Nothing may separate the soul of man from its Maker but desires and lusts. That which a conscious mind does with pleasure becomes a part of the entity's personality. For, while the woman is ordinarily changeable in mind, the real desire and purpose remains truer in woman than in man. As creative activities are applied, what you desire becomes law. The spirituality of each soul is such that the purpose, the design, the desire, the application of self in any direction changes the urges and builds or lessens the emotions in the physical. The mind in the entity becomes aware of longings, innate in the inner self, also the arousing of emotions in the physical attributes of the body, as indicated as to how these came into being. As self is a part of creative forces or God, Spirit, the Son. These are one. The body, mind, and soul are one. Their desires must be one. Their purposes, their aim must be one then, to be ideal. The body was first a cell by the union of desire. Then of itself at birth into materiality, the consciousness gradually awoke to the influences about same of body, mind, and soul, until it reached the consciousness of the ability for the reproduction within itself of desire, hope, fear. And the whole of creation, then, is bound in the consciousness of self. That influence, that force is the psychic self. in the experience of Amelius and I, or I. Adam and Eve, the knowledge of their position, or that as is known in the material world today as desires and physical bodily charms, the understanding of sex relationships, came into the experience. With these came the natural fear of that as had been forbidden, that they know themselves to be a part of, but not of, that as partook of earthly, or the desires in the manner as were about them, in that as had been their heritage. Were this turned to that period when this desire, then, becomes consecrated in that accomplished again in the virgin body of the mother of the Son of Man, we see this then crystallized into that even that of the flesh may be, with the proper desire in all its purity, consecrated to the living forces as manifest by the ability in that body so brought into being, as to make a way of escape for the erring man. Hence we have found throughout the ages, so oft the times when conception of truth became rampant with free love, with the desecration of those things that brought to these in the beginning that of the knowledge of their existence, as to that may be termed, and betimes became, the moral, or morality of a people's. Yet this same exaltation that comes from association of kindred bodies, that have their lives consecrated in a purposefulness, that makes for the ability of retaining those of the essence or creation in every virile body can be made to become the fires that light truth, love, hope, patience, peace, harmony. For they are ever the key to those influences that fire the imaginations of those that are gifted in any form of depicting the high emotions of human experience, whether it be in the one or the other fields, and hence is judged by those that may not be able, or through desire submit themselves, as did Amelius and I, to those elements, through the forces in the life as about them. Sex relations are of the highest vibrations that are experienced in a material world, and are the basis of that which is termed the original sin, and hence may be easily misunderstood, misconstrued, misinterpreted, in the experience of every individual, but these would be known, that the control of such, rather than being controlled by such, gives that which makes for the awareness of spiritual intent and purpose. The sex organs are the centers through which all creative energies, whether mental or spiritual, find their inception in a material world for an expression. As has been given, when this force in sex is raised, or rated, in its inception through the mental forces of the body, this finds expression in that of giving love influence in the life or lives of the individual, as well as that which may be brought into being as a gratification of a physical desire. For there is no soul but what the sex life becomes the greater influence in the life, not as always in gratification in the physical act, but rather that finds expression in the creative forces and creative abilities of the body itself. Sexual activities, turned into the channel more for spiritual insight, may raise one to a high mental expression, as well as to a plane of judgment that may bring greater understanding and advancement. The abstinence of or from relationship with the opposite sex is well when the creative force is put to creative activity in the mental. But when these are at variance with other conditions, these may become just as harmful to the imaginative system or to the central nervous system, from breaking off activities with the sympathetic and cerebrospinal, and thus become harmful. Question: how should love and the sexual life properly function? A. Sexual relations should be the outcome, not the purpose of, but the outcome of the answering of soul to soul in their associations. Know that love and God are one, that relations in the sexual life are the manifestations in the mental attributes of each. For, unless such associations become on such a basis, they become vile in the experience of those who join in such relations. Question: through my meditation, has the Kundalini fire risen to the head or top of spine at the base of the skull? A. When this has arisen, and is disseminated properly through the 7 centers of the body, it has purified the body from all desire of sex relationships. For this is an outlet through which one may attain celibacy. There are those for whom it is best that they keep a life of celibacy, owing to their circumstance and their activities. Not that these, sexual, desires are not to be gratified to the extent that makes for the developments in a normal manner, but to gratify any desire in the carnal forces of the body, rather than in the satisfying of the spiritual life that comes of creation itself in such emotions as to become such an one as to make for the pricks that are to be kicked against time and time again. Cultivate the spiritual, the mental and physical desire, rather than those carnal desires. Question: is masturbation or self-abuse injurious? Either injurious, unless it is the activity that comes with the natural raising of the vibrations in the system to meet the needs or the excess of those impulses in a body. Question: is the destiny of woman's body to return to the rib of man, out of which it was created? If so, how, and what is meant by the rib? With this you touch upon delicate subjects, upon which much might be said respecting the necessity of that union of influences or forces that are divided in the earth in sex, in which all must become what? As he gave an answer to the question, whose wife will she be? Luke, in the heavenly kingdom you are neither married nor given in marriage, neither is there anything as sex, you become as one in the union of that of which you have been the portion from the beginning. Here again we find an entity every whit a woman, not having changed its sex in its experiences in the earth. No wonder the entity doesn't understand men, nor men understand the entity. They cannot think in the same channel, not having experienced that which is the prompting urge from the first cause and the twig or a rib out of the first cause. Question: what causes changes in sex, and why do some change, others not? That is from the spiritual desire. Now, desire may begin in a varied form or manner, and in some conditions appear only as wish, or as an expression of a sensing from within. In the same sphere, that is, in other planets, there may be an entirely different sex by the desire or that builded. See? The sex urge is inborn, to be sure, but if the purpose of those who bring individuals into being is only for expressing the beauty and love of the creative forces or God, the urge is different with such individuals. Why, it's the law. Sex and marriage. If such forces, sex, are turned to those channels for the aggrandizement of selfish motives, or for the satisfying of that within the urge for the gratification of emotions, they become destructive. Not only in the manner of the offspring but also in the very physical body of the offspring, as well as in the energies of the bodies so producing same. Relationships in the sex are the exercising of the highest emotions in which a physical body may indulge. And only in man is there found that such are used as that of destruction to the body offspring. Question: is monogamy the best form of home relationship? Let the teachings be rather toward the spiritual intent. Whether it's monogamy, polygamy, or what not, let it be the answering of the spiritual within the individual. But monogamy is the best, of course, as indicated from the scripture itself, 1:1. For the union of one should ever be one. Life is of, and is, the creative force. It is that you worship as God. Those then that besmirch same by overindulgence besmirch that which is best within themselves. And that should be the key to birth control or sex relations, or every phase of the relationships between the sons and daughters of men, that would becomes the sons and daughters of God. Question: is continence in marriage advisable, except when mating to produce offspring? A. For some, yes. In other cases it would be very bad on the part of each, while in others it would be bad on one or the other. See? Question: should men or women who do not have the opportunity to marry have sex relationships outside of marriage? This again is a matter of principle within the individual. The sex organs, the sex demands of every individual, must be gratified in some manner as a portion of the biological urge within the individual. These begin in the present, child, with curiosity. For it is as natural for there to be sexual relations between man and women, when drawn together in their regular relations or activities, as it is for the flowers to bloom in the spring, or for the snows to come in the winter. There should be agreement between those individuals in such sex relationships, and only when there is such should there be the relationship. For the lack of such agreements brings more discordant notes between individuals than any portion of relationships with the opposite sex. The disagreements may be very slight at times, but they grow. Question: is sex outside of marriage injurious morally or spiritually? This must ever be answered from one's own inner self. Those attributes of procreation, of the proactivity in individuals, are from the God force itself. The promptings of the inner man must ever be the guide. Not from any source may there be given other than. Study to show thyself approved unto the God that thou would worship. In the light of thine own understanding keep the body pure. For thy body is the temple of the living God. Do not desecrate same in thine own consciousness. Question: since my husband has been impotent these many years, would sexual relationship with some trusted friend, a bachelor, help me so I can function positively and rhythmically in carrying on the normal business of home life and work? Please advise me in regard to such. Such questions as these can only be answered in what is thy ideal. Do not have an ideal and not attempt to reach same. There is no condemnation in those who do such for helpful forces, but if for personal selfish gratification, it is sin. As given by the Master that it has been written that man shall not commit adultery, yet I say unto thee that he that looketh on a woman to lust after her has committed adultery already. Matthew. Question: when one partner in a marriage loses desire for sexual relation and to the other it is still necessary, how may this problem be met? Only in a united effort on the part of each to fill that which is the need of each. All boys should be circumcised. Give sex education before puberty. Question: you will have before you the question of sex and sex relations as related to delinquency of the teens and younger ages. A. It is given in thy writings of Scripture, although in a hidden manner. You may observe, if you will look, how Adam named those that were brought before him in creation. Their name indicates to the carnal mind their relationships in the sex condition or question. Hence the question you seek is as old as or older than man. This has been the problem throughout man's experience or man's sojourn in the earth. Since taking bodily form, with the attributes of the animal in which he had projected himself as a portion of, that he might through the self gain that activity which was visualized to him in those relationships in the earth. Hence slow has been the progress through the ages. This is ever and will ever be a question, a problem, until there is the greater spiritual awakening within man's experience that this phase biologically, sociologically, or even from the analogical experience, must be as a stepping stone for the greater awakening, and as the exercising of an influence in man's experience in the creative forces for the reproduction of species, rather than for the satisfying or gratifying of a biological urge within the individual that partakes or has partaken of the first causes of man's encasement in body in the earth. For these that would be of a help must of necessity take the conditions as they exist, and not as they would like to have them. So, then, give you unto men as this: train you the child when he is young, and when he is old he will not depart from the Lord. Train him, train her, train them rather in the sacredness of that which has come to them as a privilege, which has come to them as a heritage. From a falling away, to be sure, but through the purifying of the body in thought, in act, in certainty it may make for a peoples, a state, a nation that may indeed herald the coming of the Lord. Every child born into the earth, from the age of 2 years begins to find there is something that takes place within its body, and that it is different, not as animals, though the animal instinct is there, of the biological urge, that is a law. For that is the source of man's undoing. But you who set yourselves as examples in the order of society, education, Christian principles, religious thought, religious ideals, hold rather than to anything else to that love which is unsexed. For he hath given that in the heavenly state, in the higher forces, there is neither marriage, for they are as one. Yet you say you are in the earth, you are born with the urge. Purify same in service to him, in expressions of love, in expressions of the fruits of the Spirit, which are gentleness, kindness, brotherly love, long-suffering. Question: are there any sex practices that should be abolished? Interrupting: there are many sex practices in the various portions of this land, as in other lands, that must be abolished. How? Only through the education of the young. Not in their teenage, for then they are set. Even in the formative years. Even as the child studies its letters, let a portion of the instructions be in the care of the body, and more the stress upon the care in relation to the sex of the body. Do not begin after there has been already begun the practice of the conditions that make for destructive forces, or for the issue of the body itself, to become as a burning within the very elements of the body itself, and to find expression in the gratifying of the emotions. Those changes wrought in the earth expression are ever done when man is just beginning. It is not in old men or old women, or even when they are just beginning to form their ideas, but when the body, mind and spirit are at an at-one-ment with one another that changes are wrought in the earth purpose, through the first 6 to 12 years of the entity's experience. This man is just beginning to learn. After that, as termed by the psychologist, psychoanalysts and the like, they reach the stage of puberty when there is the altering of all the impressions. And many do not outgrow those first impressions received from 3 to 6 years. Their character is builded. The greater numbers of the changes, of the young, are during the first, second, and third year of experience in an earthly plane. True, each and every entity should be allowed to live their own life, but, as has been given, train the child in the way, and when he is old he will not depart from same. Proverbs. But to force issues when in the formative period is to break the will, or to build resentment that makes for the breaking of other wills as the development comes. Training in the way of an ideal, and the purposes of the ideal, as it may enfold and unfold in the life of an individual, is to give such an one the basis upon which they will build their lives. Train such an one to depend upon the divine that lies within. The greater aid is to counsel as respecting his purpose, his ideal. For each soul enters the material plane for the manifesting of its individual application of an ideal in respect to the creative forces or energies. Each soul is then endowed by its Maker with that of choice, with that birthright, and to live another's life, and to direct or counsel even, other than that which is in accord with that of choice, is to become rather a hindrance than an aid. For to subjugate an individual soul to the will of another is to break that which is the greater power, the greater influence in the experience of the soul for its advancement. An entity is more often trained or convinced away from its natural spiritual import. For is it not for spiritual development that each soul enters? And not merely for mental or material or physical. For the more oft are the girls or boys in their teens, in their younger years, misdirected when they are only attempting to give sole expression of that which moves them. Those that are ground in their own subtle selves to their idea, without an ideal, misconstrue the individual's or child's intent and purpose. Teach the entity discipline, but in love, in patience. Break not the will of an entity, rather guide, guard, and direct same in those channels through the development, for we all must pay the price necessary for development of self. Hence, never give to an entity a dictum for the entity. rather outline that is found in self, and let others apply same to self. For the mind partakes of memory and thought of its own and takes that necessary for its own development. Training and guiding children. Do not make so many corrections. Make it once and then let it pay the price for same. Not in punishments as in bodily punishments, but rather the denial of things that are like. Give the entity a reason, ever, for corrections given, not only because you say so but because of its moral influence upon the entity. Take the time to explain such to the entity when corrections are made. Indeed, it may be said, while the entity may be spoiled, they that spoil the child and spare the rod will eventually regret same. Not that this means the corrections are to be made by force alone, but those tendencies, those temperaments must be guided in the direction in which the strong mind, the indomitable temper, the determinations may be guided correctly. Reason with the entity oft. Especially in the stories, the tales told, let them have something of the spiritual nature also. As the developing mind is reaching that with its studies, its readings, towards hero worship, unless self, the father or the mother, can remain the hero, you fail in meeting the full needs of the developing mind. Remember, the mind and the body is a growing thing. Grow with same. Unless that growth is apparent, then the parent becomes to the growing mind a back number and out of date. The ideal marriage. To deny the daily activities, the daily instructions in school as being passé or forward is to create a barrier between the child and parent. To deny or to build a barrier between one parent and another in its correction, then this again builds a barrier. And they, the children, cannot love two masters. They, the parents, must be one. Forbidding, in the life of this entity, as in most others, becomes, what temptation? Do not answer the entity, especially in the early teen years, by saying, because I said so, or because it is right, but explaining why you said so, and why it is right. Question: how is the best way to explain God to a child under 12 years? In nature? Question: what can I do to help my son physically and materially? By precept, by example. In the choice of a companion, an associate, those relationships as may bring about the state, the ability of becoming co-creators or channels for soul's expression in the earth. There should be the assurance that they be of one mind, of that of the spirit of truth, that the ideals, the purposes, the hopes are one. The ideal marriage. Individuals should, as this couple, work towards a oneness of purpose. Two manifesting as one in their hopes, in their fears, in their desires, in their aspirations. There must be the answering within each that their spiritual and mental desires are one. For the Lord thy God is one. If it, marriage, is to be a success, it must be considered not from merely the outward appearance, a physical attraction, for these soon fade. Rather, it should be considered from the angle of spiritual ideals, mental aspirations, and physical agreements. These relationships are representative of the purpose of propagation of the species, as well as those ideals that arise from spiritual and mental relationships. Where the planning of recreation, of activity, of thought or study or interest is separate, you grow apart. Where the interest may be together, whether in a hobby, in a recreation, in a study, in a visitation, in an association, you grow in purpose as one. So live, then, that each activity is to the glory of God and to the honor of thy conscience. Each marital partner then becomes as a stay one for the other, becoming as a prop, as a brace, as a helpmeet. Home and career. Love is giving, it is a growth. It may be cultivated or it may be seared. That of selflessness on the part of each is necessary. This does not mean either giving up, but they each should express themselves as a complement to the best that is in each. Question: what attitude should she take toward her husband? Not merely of duty's tolerance, but that of helpfulness, for one is as necessary to the other as is that of any condition where there are two poles. Remembering that, even in the atom its polarization is necessary, or the energy is soon expended. So in that union of body in the mental being, in the physical being, for the resuscitation of life elements, that they become as necessary for one another. Such conditions do arise at times when these do not need to be as polarizations, but for the better, the bigger, the broader, the greater development of each, these are necessary one to another. The home is the nearest pattern in the earth, where there is unity of purpose in the companionship, to man's relationship to his Maker. For it is ever creative in purpose from personalities and individualities coordinated for a cause, an ideal. Making an artistic home, making a home that is the expression of beauty in all its phases, is the greater career of any individual soul. Marriage and separation. The greater of all the abilities of an entity is the ability to build an ideal in the home. Rather than so much the ideal home, the ideal in the home, that there may be the seed of the Spirit of truth. To few it is given to have a career and a home, but the greatest of all careers is the home, and those who shun it shall have much yet to answer for. For this is the nearest emblem of what each soul hopes eventually to obtain, a heavenly home. He that makes material gains at the expense of home or opportunities and obligations with his own family does so to his own undoing. It is a very hard problem to have a home and a career and both be a success. Before God and man there was the promise taken. Until death do us part. This is not idle, these were brought together. Because there are those conditions wherein each can be a complement to the other. Are these to be denied? For a period of 6 months, never leave the home, either of you, without offering a prayer together. Thy will, O God, be done in me this day. This is not sissy, this is not weak, this is strong. True, an individual, a soul, must become less and less of self or thoughts of self, yet when those activities of others in relationships to the mental, the spiritual, the soul developments, are such that the own soul development and own soul expression becomes in jeopardy, then, as he hath given, I came not to bring peace but a sword. I came to give peace, not as the world counts peace, Matt, but as that which makes for those experiences wherein the soul, the entity, is to fulfill those purposes, those activities for which it, the soul entity, came into being. But when there have been all of those experiences, all of those attempts, and there is still not, then the jeopardy of self-expression, of self-activity, as related with creative forces becomes as he hath given, a division. Question: would a separation of any sort be of help? This must be a choice within self. Self's own development is in jeopardy. Choose thou. As we would find, it would be helpful for a separation. Question: what can I do to make our marriage happier and harmonious? Act toward the wife, or thine own activities, as you would like her or others to act toward thee. Ask no more than you give. Demand no more than you allowed or allow to be demanded of thee. Marriage, such an association, is a oneness of purpose. Unless there is the oneness of purpose, there can be no harmony. This can be accomplished not of self alone, for remember, you made a mighty mess in the experience before this, you suffered for it. Better make it up now or it'll be 10 times worse the next time. When the periods come in the experience of each soul that the associations are unbearable, as to become hindrances to their keeping their own ideal, then to awaken or to attune or to change, or to alter those associations becomes necessary. But each should look into their own consciousnesses. In prayerful meditation counsel within self as to the approach. Not stern, not just forgiving without a purposefulness, but in love, in simplicity, state, give thine own feelings, thine own desires, and see if they coordinate with the purposes and desires that may be stated by him. If these are so far apart then that they may not be drawn sufficiently together for a purposeful life, well, that changes be. The entity and its associate or companion should realize that there are obligations and duties that each one owes to those for whom they have been responsible, for the development and training of lives, of life itself, and the part it has to play in contributing to the better welfare of those minds and bodies. Then, though there may be conditions not conducive to the better fulfilling of personal desires, these should be foregone in the face of obligations to others. Question: what suggestion and advice may be given me at this time regarding the advisability of another marriage? This, as we find, may come about in a year or two, but remember, as has been given, with the present companion it has not been finished yet. There must be the more perfect understanding before there is the full release. No, the soul is rather the soul mate of the universal consciousness than of an individual entity. As you begin to show forth in thy relationships with thy fellow man the love that the Father hath shown to the sons of men, by not being willing that any soul should be separated from him, you must, by the very manifestations, at some experience come to be a separation or a fusion or union with the creative forces, with the abilities, by will itself, to know thyself yet one with thy Maker. Such as have in an experience found an ideal may be said to be soulmates, and no marriages are made in heaven nor by the Father save as such do his biddings. For his sons, his daughters, his mothers, his fathers are they that do his will in the earth. Question: please explain for me what is meant by soulmate. Those of any sect or group where there is the answering of one to another, as would be the tongue to the groove, the tenon to the mortise. Or in any such where they are a complement one of another, that is what is meant by soulmate. Not that as from physical attraction, but from the mental and spiritual help. Necessary, then, becomes the proper mating of those souls that may be answers one to another, of that may bring, through that association, that companionship, into being that may be more helpful, more sustaining, more the well-rounded life or experience of those that are a portion one of another. Do not misinterpret, but knowing that all are of one, yet there are those divisions that make for a closer union, when there are the proper relationships brought about. Question: is this girl the type best suited to this man for a successful life? May be made so in each. No one is suited in the beginning, unless it has been foreordained through the ages of the mating of each. Question: I am interested in the theory of twin souls. Is this true? It depends upon what is the purpose as to the application. That there are identical souls, no. No two leaves of a tree, no two blades of grass are the same. They are the complement one to another, yes, but these are dependent upon the purpose. Rather study that, as we have indicated regarding what takes place in conception. That the soul, a portion, an expression of God's desire for companionship, might find expression, the souls of men and women came into being. That there might be that which would make each soul, then, as a fit companion for that realm. There is the necessity of fitting itself through the experiences of all phases and realms of existence, then, that it, the soul, may not cause disruption in the realm of beauty, harmony, strength of divinity in its companionships with the creative force. Edgar Cayce and entity, as in the present Earth's plane, have had many experiences together, and their soul and spirit are well knit, and must of necessity present each that they may be one. For we find in the beginning that they, these two, which we shall speak of as they until separated, were as one in mind, soul, spirit, body. And in the first earth's plane as the voice over many waters, when the glory of the Father's giving of the earth's indwelling of man was both male and female in one. In flesh form in earth's plane we find the first in that of the Poseidian forces, when both were confined in the body of the female, for this being The stronger in the then expressed or applied forces found manifestations for each in that form. Yet with the experiences as have been brought in that plane and period, we find then the separation of the body. For the desire of the flesh being to give of self in bodily form to the other, it brought the separating of the spirit and soul from the carnal forces when next brought to earth's plane. The experiences there were as these. These too were the giving of the spiritual development in the land Atlantis, and the giving of the uplift to the peoples of the day and age. The desire came for the bodily connection of coition with one of lower estate, and through this treachery of one not capable of understanding it brought physical defects in the limbs of these then contained in the one body in physical form. Hence in the coma, and karma exercised in coma, there was brought the separation, as given in the injunction from the Maker, I have this day set before you good and evil. Choose the light or the darkness, Deuteronomy. With this desire of self's aggrandizement there was brought separation in the next plane, yet bound together in physical affections one for the other. In that of the Egyptian rule, in the first of the pharaohs do we find this connection as separated brought to the earth's plane. There we find again the priest and the lawgiver in they, though separated now in male and female. In BC we find together. The desires then coming from the sex desire between the two for the developing, and in that we find it counted as righteousness in both, for, though in the priestcraft in the one, and given to sexual desires in more than in one, the desire remained in the one God, for which the oneness was created. In these we give one of the illustrations of the history of these associations, of which there were many, and for which both suffered physically, and they each bear in the body at present a mark designating these conditions. On the female body, just below the left breast, to the side and on the edge of breast itself, the mark and an answering one on the body of the male, in the opposite proximity of the breast. Keep a normal balance, not being an extremist in any direction, whether in diet, exercise, spirituality, or morality, but in all let there be a coordinate influence. For every phase of the physical, mental, and spiritual life is dependent upon the other. They are one. To be well balanced is only to be well equipped and doesn't mean movement or activity has begun. The knowledge of self, the knowledge of the various influences in the experience of self is only valuable or constructive when applied in the experience of self. One day must be kept in that way that will feed the mental and spiritual life of a body. All work and no play will destroy the best abilities. Yet these have been set in the manner as is outlined in the spirit of. Remember to keep the day holy. The life must be well-balanced life, not lopsided in any manner, to bring contentment, not necessarily be satisfied, for that is to become stagnant. But to find self in whatever position self occupies, force self to be content but not satisfied, knowing that the applications of the spiritual, mental, and physical laws are but the pattern one of another, and in so setting self in the direction all must be working in coordination and cooperation. As has been indicated so oft, those that live rather what to many is rather the mediocre but never the extremes make life and its associations in the world better. There is in a normal healthy individual alive every element that is known or may be known outside of that body. Hence for these to live in harmony it becomes necessary that an even balance be kept within and without. Just as when there are the atmospheric pressures upon a body, the body finds itself adjusting itself to the various changes. And this should be the same activity throughout the diets of a body. Do not be excessive in anything. Do not be abnormal. Let's be normal in everything. The body should be mindful of the physical forces of the body, that the body may keep a well-rounded, even balance. Do not allow anxiety, nor those conditions that bring success or distraughtness, to force the physical activities to such an extent as to bring an unbalanced condition in the physical system. For a body, physical, To function under stress is to break down either the mental or the physical result. When the wheel of life, that is given to each soul, becomes lopsided or heavy through carnal or too great seeking into those things that are not to be used other than in the will and desire of the Creator, it makes for the lack of that called in the earth poise or temperament, such as to be the better for an inner or soul development. In the mental attributes, take those of the physical, mental, and spiritual, and keep the well-rounded forces for a fourfold life. Do not allow the material things to outweigh the mental or the spiritual life, for to become lopsided in any direction is to make for discontent and discouraging conditions as must sooner or later arise in each one's experience. Do not allow any discouraging forces and disorders in the lives of others, or loss of confidence in others, to disturb the equilibrium. While one must think highly of self, do not be over-democratic, neither too self-sufficient. There is the medium ground on which all may meet. For God is not a respecter of persons. Through diet and exercise the greater portion of all disturbances may be equalized and overcome, if the right mental attitude is kept. Some use the theory that if it is good for a little, more would be better. Usually, more is worse in most anything. The best is that individual or soul entity that keeps well balanced, never the extremist, but all things to all men. It is true that one rarely succeeds who has many diversified interests. Yet thy activities and the dividing of thy time should be diversified according to a definite undertaking in a specific direction, that the choice of thy dealings with thy fellow man may be the more thoroughly understood from every direction, and not merely diversified in the attempt to be a piddler in many undertakings. Question: how can he prepare himself to render a great service to God and know what is expected of him? Keeping well balanced and not becoming lopsided or self-centered in any manner. Living the balanced, holistic life. He that contributes only to his own welfare soon finds little to work for. He that contributes only to the welfare of others soon finds too much of others and lost the appreciation of self, or of its ideals. Do not become a crank on any subject. All work and no play is as bad as all play with no work. Question: please explain to me what is meant by being passive. Passive, as the word itself indicated, not being one-sided. As indicated, not in a mood or manner where a hard feeling, a resentment is held or grudge, but rather as being used, a channel, a door, an outlet. Keep all the forces well-rounded in that straight and narrow way that leads to the perfect understanding. Question: please advise and guide me in my attempt to bring the physical body to a point where it may be a better channel for the manifestation of the spiritual forces. A. So conduct, so arrange the activities of the body as to be better balanced as to the mental and the physical attributes of the body. Take more outdoor exercise. It isn't that the mental should be numbed, or should be cut off from their operations or their activities, but make for a more evenly balanced body, physical and mental. Know how to apply the rules of metaphysical operations to a corn cob, or to fence rail, or to a hammer, an axe, a walking cane, as well as the theories of this, that, or other mind, that in 9 cases in 10 is seen to become a storehouse for mental deficiencies of physical energies. Now get the difference. It is not mental unbalance, but a mental body may be so overused as to allow physical energies to become detrimental forces in a physical body. For each energy must expend itself in some direction, even as a thought takes form brings into being a mental image. Is that image in the position of being a building force cooperative with the energies of the physical body? Or do they destroy some motive force in the physical without allowing an outlet for its activity? Then be a well-rounded body. Take specific definite exercises morning and evening. Make the body physically as well as mentally tired and those things that have been producing those conditions where sleep, inertia, poisons in system from non-eliminations will disappear. There is the lack of vitamins as B and C in this body. 1. The C, stamina for mental energies that are carried in the white tissue in nerve energy and plexus. B, as is of calcium, of silicon, of iron. These would be well balanced, will those of the food values that carry same be taken, but unless the activities physical for the body are such as to put same into activity, they become drossas and set themselves to become operative, irrespective of other conditions. Now, when these are taken into the system, if they are not put to work by the activities of the system, either physical or mental, they become destructive tissue. That thou eatest, see it doing that thou would have it do. Now there is often considered as to why do those of either the vegetable, mineral, or combination compounds have different effects under different conditions? It is the consciousness of the individual body. Give one a dose of clear water, with the impression that it will act as salts, how often will it act in that manner? Just as the impressions to the whole of the organism, for each cell of the blood stream, each corpuscle, is a whole universe in itself. In the layers of one is dependent upon the activity of another. One that fills the mind, the very being, with an expectancy of God will see his movement. His manifestation in the wind, the sun, the earth, the flowers, the inhabitants of the earth. Just as great a sin to overeat as to overdrink, to overthink as to overact. Remember that overenthusiasm is as bad as dilatory activity. Great movements, great forces move slowly. Make haste slowly. Be not overanxious. Be intense, yes. Be consistent, sure. Be you perfect, yes, even as you desire that others be. But leave much of the results with him. Let the attitudes be, everything that is eaten, as well as every activity, purposeful in conception, constructive in nature. Analyze that. To do good is to think constructively, to think creatively. What is creative, what is constructive, you may ask? That which never hinders, which never makes for the bringing of any harm to others. The physical is to use cooperative natures. Cooperating with nature, cooperating with spirit, cooperating with mind, to make that which will be the whole. For what is the first law? The Lord thy God is one. Mark. Take time to be holy. For holiness is oneness of the mental, spiritual, and the material body. For, as the physical body is but a temple, each portion must coordinate one with another for a perfect union or perfect unison of service or activity, so must the mental mind, the physical mind, the spiritual mind coordinate as one with another. To do good is to live good and not to appear good. Be good, not just appear good. To live love is to be love. It is not all just to live, not all just to be good, but good for something, that you may fulfill that purpose for which you have entered this experience. There are no shortcuts in metaphysics, no matter what those say who would force by visualization, by application of numbers, or stars, or bars, or any phase of the astrological aspects. These are urges. Life is lived within self. You live it. You don't profess it, you live it. What is it all about then? Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, thine soul, thine mind, thine body, and thy neighbor as thyself. Luke. The rest of all the theories that may be concocted by man are nothing, if those are just lived. No, as the teacher of teachers gave, there is one proof for all, by their fruits you shall know them. Matthew. As the understanding comes more and more, never does it make the entity other than the more humble, the more meek, the more long-suffering, the more patient. Of this you may be sure. Question. In what form does the Antichrist come, spoken of in Revelation? In the spirit of that opposed to the spirit of truth. The fruits of the Spirit of the Christ are love, joy, obedience, long-suffering, brotherly love, kindness. Against such there is no law. The spirit of hate, the Antichrist, is contention, strife, fault-finding, lovers of praise. Let thy patience, thy tolerance, thy activity be of such a positive nature that it fits thee as a glove. To minister to those that are sick, to those that are afflicted, to sit with those that are shut in, to read with those that are losing their perception, to reason with those that are weary of the turmoils, showing brotherly love, patience, persistence in the Lord, and the love that overcometh all things. What is righteousness? Just being kind, just being noble, just being self-sacrificing, just being willing to be the hands for the blind, the feet for the lame. These are constructive experiences. Being holy is just being kind, gentle, patient, long-suffering. Live those that are the fruits of the Spirit, namely, peace, harmony, long-suffering, brotherly love, patience. These, if you show them forth in thy life, in thy dealings with thy fellow man, grow to be what? Truth. In truth you are free from what? Earthly toil, earthly cares. These then are not just axioms, not just sayings, but living truths. Fruits of the Spirit of truth. For it has not entered the heart of man all the glories that have been prepared, nor all the beauties that may be experienced by those that seek his face. Showing mercy, showing grace, showing peace, long-suffering, brotherly love, kindness, even under the most trying circumstances. For what is the gain if you love those only that love thee? But to bring hope, to bring cheer, to bring joy, yet to bring a smile again to those whose face and heart are bathed in tears and in woe, is but making that divine love shine in thy own soul. Then smile, be joyous, be glad. For the day of the Lord is at hand. Those who would teach, whether the teaching be that of shoveling dirt, raising cabbage, extracting square root, or making drinks, be done with that purpose, that I may make manifest my love, my concept of the God that I trust with my soul. Not in some great deed of heroism, not in some great speech or act that may be pointed to with pride, but rather in the little kindnesses from day to day. Dare to speak gently when thou art even berated by those from whom, in the material sense, you have every right to expect or to even demand honor, and hope and faith. Remember, the soft word turns away wrath. Only those things that are just, those things that are beautiful, those things that are harmonious, that arises from brotherly kindness, brotherly love, patience, hope, and graciousness live. These are the fruits of those unseen forces that you recognize as being the powers that rule this universe, this heterogeneous mass of human emotions and human souls. That power which arises from good, not from hate nor malice nor greed nor covetousness. For these take hold upon the gates of hell and are the torments to man's soul. According to the true law of spirit, like begets like. Thus as harmony and beauty and grace reign within the consciousness of an entity, it gives that to others, and others wonder what moved them to feel different, when no one spoke. No one appeared to be anxious. This is the manner in which the Spirit of truth operates among the children of men. He is in his temple in thee, and will meet thee in thine search for him. Not from without but rather from within may each soul know him, through patience with self, with others, seeing in those that would speak evil of thee, those that would despitefully use thee, those even who would take advantage of thine gentleness, thine kindness, only the good. Knowing that none may do such save that the power be given them through the giver of all power, all life, that thou, through thine own experience, may know that the Father suffereth with each child he hath purged, that it may be a companion with him. For it was in seeking for such companionship that thy soul was brought into being, and would those lose that birthright in him? For he will guard, sustain thee in thine seeking. Merely living a life that does not bring an incentive to someone else to glorify God is sin and just as vile in his eyes as one who in lack of thought or of judgment would err. faith, hope, patience, long-suffering, kindness, gentleness, brotherly love, these be those over which so many stumble. Yet they are the very voices, yea, the very morning sun's light in which the entity has caught that vision of the new age, the new understanding, the new seeking for the relationships of a creative force to the sons of men. Who is the greatest among you? He that is the servant of all. He that has not merely the material but the whole of an association, a corporation, in mind as to whom it serves, as to what it serves, and how. The greatest service to God is service to His creatures. As the teacher of teachers has given, he that is the greatest in the earth is he that ministers the most to others. Great indeed are they that build in the consciousness of each soul they meet, greater than they that build a city. In service alone may any soul find advancement or development. Service is asked of all men, rather than sacrifice. In sacrifice there is penance, but grace doth more greatly abound to him who sheds the love of the Father upon those that the body may contact from day to day. Question: how can I use my abilities to best serve humanity? By filling to the best possible purpose and ability that place, that niche the body, mind, and soul occupies. Being the best husband, the best neighbor, the best friend to each and every individual the body meets. He that is willing to become as naught that they may serve the better in whatever capacity. As a merchant, be the best merchant; as a neighbor, the best neighbor; as a friend, the best friend. Don't be weary of well-doing. If it requires years, give years. You'll not be in heaven if you're not leaning on the arm of someone you have helped. Helping others is best way to rid yourself of your own troubles. Charity. Talk is well. Action is wise. Deeds are golden. The manner in which an individual, a community, a state or nation treats those less fortunate, those ill, those aged and infirm, those mentally possessed, is the manner in which such an individual, community, state or nation serves its Maker. The joy, the peace, the happiness that may be ours is in doing for the other fellow. While position, power, wealth is to be sought, to be sure, but let these conditions be rather from service given in the little things, service rendered to the fellow man. Few people are worth anything until someone is dependent on them. He that marrieth doth well. He that marrieth not that has gone into service doeth better. All that you may ever keep is just what you give away, and that you give away is advice, counsel, manner of life you live yourself. The manner in which you treat your fellow man, your patience, your brotherly love, your kindness, your gentleness, that you give away, that is all that you may possess in those other realms of consciousness. To help one to help himself is greater than giving, without the ability of the one receiving to see. Knowledge must be applied. What is to be given in this, donations, or that direction for any purpose shall be prompted by the real heart of the individual, and not by even a suggestion from others. What said the Master to those that saw the poor widow cast in 3 pence? She has given more than them all, Mark. Question: how much should she give of her earning capacity to charity? 10%, as all should. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and they that hoard same, whether it be bread, wood, gold, or what, are only cheating themselves in cheating the Lord. For thy brethren are thy obligation. For thou art thy brother's keeper. The basic principle of that love manifested by the Son was ever, others, Lord, others. That which we give enriches us, rather than that which we receive. It is not what the mind knows, but what the mind applies about that it knows, that makes for soul, mental or material advancements. There are no shortcuts to knowledge, to wisdom, to understanding. These must be lived, must be experienced by each and every soul. Know, the Lord thy God is one. And all that you may know of good must first be within self. All you may know of God must be manifested through thyself. To hear of him is not to know. To apply and live and be is to know. Communion with him means doing, not shutting self away from thine brother, from thine neighbor, even from thine self, rather applying self to the duties material, mental and spiritual, as is known. Knowledge is well, but knowledge without the works or without the application is worse than useless. Knowledge of God is a growing thing, for you grow in grace, in knowledge, in understanding as you apply that you know. But remember, as given by him, to know to do good and do it not is sin. Knowledge without the practical ability to apply same may become sin. For it is knowledge misapplied that was the fall or the confusion in Eve. As you use that as is known, there is given the more and more light to know from whence you came and whither you go. Put into practice day by day that as is known. Not some great deed or act or speech, but line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little. As you use that thou hast in hand day by day, the next step may be given thee. Not all at once, for these become rather overpowering if more is gained than may be used in the present. It is not the knowledge, not the power or might, but the simplicity of application that is the wisdom of the sages, the understanding of creative forces. Knowledge may not be put on as a cloak, but must be an internal growth toward that which has been determined as an ideal. Life is earnest, life is work, life is doing, not having it poured out, not having it given, but work. The Spirit does not call on anyone to live that it does not already know and understand. In the doing does there come the knowledge, the understanding for the next step. Do not gain knowledge only to thine own undoing. Remember Adam. Do not obtain that which you cannot make constructive in thine own experiences and in the experience of those whom you contact day by day. Knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Do not attempt to force, impel, or to even try to impress thy knowledge upon another. Remember what the serpent did to Eve. Unless one is good for something, unless it is to make the experience of another appreciate the opportunity of the blessing of the Spirit of truth in their activities, it must eventually come to naught. Hence not religion, not even goodness, but rather the practical application of not tenets but the acts and the soul of the Christ consciousness in the material world is to be sought. All knowledge is to be used in the manner that will give help and assistance to others, and the desire is that the laws of the Creator be manifested in the physical world. All power is given through knowledge and understanding. Do not abuse that power lest it turns and rends the perpetrator. And who seek knowledge is seeking the greatest gifts of the gods of the universe, and in using such knowledge to worship God renders a service to the fellow man. Knowledge without judgment may easily become sin. Understanding without spirituality may too soon become egotism. He that hath great knowledge, understanding, and experience, of him much is required. The more knowledge, the more responsibility. The more love, the more ability. Wisdom, then, is fear to misapply knowledge in thy dealings with thyself, thy fellow man. Many individuals have knowledge and little wisdom. Many have wisdom without knowledge. Few get understanding that have mere knowledge. Without knowledge there is not the comprehension, and without understanding it does not become practical. Wisdom is indeed to be willing to be led by the Spirit of God rather than to be guided by thine own concept of paralleling or classifying or reasoning. And what is knowledge? To know the Lord, to do good, to cast out fear, for partaking of knowledge symbolizes the bringing of fear. The beginning of knowledge is to know self and self's relationship to God, then the relationship to the fellow man, then material knowledge to any entity, any soul, may become valuable, worthwhile, aggressive, advancing, success. Thou art conscious in a living world, aware of suffering, of sorrow, of joy, of pleasure. These, to be sure, are the price one pays for having will. knowledge, faith and belief. All knowledge, then, prehistoric Egypt, now or in the future, is latent within self, would man but begin to understand. The stamp, the image of the Creator, is a part of the heritage of each soul. No soul gains knowledge or understanding save through experience. Question: please define spiritual faith. The application of that is awakened by the Spirit within. As self is lost in doing his biddings does the faith grow, for growth is made through the exercising of, the losing of, self in him. What is faith? Evidence. What is evidence? Assurance. Thoughts are things, and, as the mental dwells upon these thoughts, so does it give strength, power to things that do not appear. And thus does, indeed, there come that as is so oft given, that faith is the evidence of things not seen. In him, by faith and works, are you made every whit whole. Faith without works is dead. As has been given, by faith are you healed, and that not of yourself. Again, as it hath been given, show me thy faith by thy works. What one believes alone is not sufficient, but what one does about that one believes either makes for advancement, growth, or retardment. If you would have healing for this body, not merely by saying, "Yes, I believe Jesus was the Son of God, yes, I believe he died that I might have an advocate with the Father. Yes, this also." But what are you doing about it? Are you living like that? Do you treat thy brother, thy neighbor, thy friend, thy foe, as though this were true? For no matter what you say, the manner in which you treat thy fellow man is the answer to what you really believe. Hope and faith are living things. One may never put into words nor tell another by words, or acts even, as to what that consciousness of faith is. Yet we may see the shadows of same in what faith has prompted in the experiences of others, as it is so well expressed in the 7th of Hebrews, or as given in that God so had faith in man as to give his Son, himself, to die in the flesh. Or, even as a man, Abraham, the son of faith, the author of faith, offered, or was willing to offer, his only son, his physical heir, knowing that there must be a purpose from that inner voice as to that command. Honest skepticism is a seeker. Expectancy and optimism. Doubt creates fear, as does insincerity create abhorrence. Honest doubt is not a sin. Faith is an attribute of the soul and spiritual body. Expect much, you will obtain much. Expect little, you will obtain little. Expect nothing, you will obtain nothing. Unless the body looks upon the experiences day by day as necessary influences and forces, and uses them as a stepping stone, soon does life become a pessimistic outlook. If each and every disappointment, each and every condition that arises, is used as a stepping stone for better things and looking for it and expecting it, then there will still be continued the optimism, or the looking for and expecting of. If an individual doesn't expect great things of God, he has a very poor God, hasn't he? Just try your very best. It is the try that is the more often counted as righteousness, and not the success or failure. You only fail if you quit trying. To not know, but do the best as is known, felt, experienced in self, to him it is counted as righteousness. Sincerity and honesty. Each individual may have the try counted as righteousness, not as an excuse, neither as justification. For you have been justified once for all, through the Christ consciousness that you seek. Man may make all efforts, all activity, but only the Spirit of truth, only God may give the increase, the result. For remember ever, the little leavening that you do day by day leavens the whole lot. Man looks upon the outward appearances and judges success by material standard. God looks on the heart and judges rather by the sincerity of the individual's try. For, remember, though he walked in many ways contrary to God's edicts and laws, Abram's try was counted to him for righteousness. Do not lose faith in self, for if faith is lost in self and self's abilities to accomplish, then there is already defeat staring thee in the face. This would be true for every individual. Becoming discouraged only lessens the capacities of individuals to become aware of that consciousness of the divine forces and divine rights that may be sought by each individual, if it is doing that which enables it to look its Savior, its guide, its Lord in the face and say, I have done my best. The Lord abhorreth the quitter. Sincerity is the keynote of every individual soul. Who is sincere? 1 in a million. Only thine own self may one be sincere with. Then the sincerity to another must follow, as the night does the day. False actions, false activities do not bring truth, do not make for any good thing that may come from same. Only in truth, only in sincerity, may truth, or that upon which growth or development for which one enters into this life, or any phase of life, will this bring a development for anyone. The judgments, my son, of thy sincerity are ever according to thy spiritual life. We find in Jupiter the universal consciousness, the sincerity of the entity. For, when the entity gives expression of its feelings, one may be sure that it is the entity speaking. For, as indicated, the entity is deep, sincere. Though the entity may be called by others the plotter, it may arrive, it may attain to that peace, that understanding which comes only from true sincerity. You have made promises to self, to thy Maker, to thy friends. Remember what thou hast vowed, keep. For the Lord hath need of those who are honest with themselves. Half a truth is worse than a whole lie, it deceiveth even the soul. The spirit of harmony and cooperation, joy and happiness. Happiness is a state of mind attained by giving same to others. The joy, the peace, the happiness that may be ours is in doing for the other fellow. Happiness is love of something outside of self. It may never be obtained, may never be known by loving only things within self. Few are willing to pay the price for happiness, which is tolerance, patience, and selflessness in the expressions to its associates, its fellow man, its activities in the earth. Do all in the joyous manner, for his gospel is the glad gospel, the joyous life, the happy life. The Lord loveth those who expect much of him, in giving much of themselves joyously. Know, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one, mark. And while each soul seeks to manifest in a material world, the purpose, the idea, the ideal is that all are to work in unison for the good of all. If the world will ever know its best, it must learn cooperation. When the earth was brought into existence or into time and space, all the elements that are without man may be found in the living human body. Hence these in coordination, as we see in nature, as we see in the air, as we see in the fire or in the earth, makes the soul, body and mind one coordinating factor with the universal creative energy we call God. Coordinate thyself, then, with nature, with the environs thou art in, through thine inner self. The whole of the experience of an individual entity in a material plane is the coordinating and cooperation of creative forces from without to the divine within as to keeping an activity that may bring into manifestations health and happiness. When one looks in nature of every character, the first law is harmony, and is of divine origin, even as life, and when same is not in accord with that of the creative energy, or God, discord is the result. Inner peace, patience, love, kindness, gentleness, long-suffering, brotherly love, of themselves bring peace. For he is peace, not as men count peace, not as men count happiness, but in that harmonious manner in which life, the expression of the Father in the earth, is one, even as he is one. As he gave, that peace I give you, that you may know that thy spirit, you thy soul, beareth witness with me that you are mine, I am thine, even as the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. You will find that peace, that harmony, that comes only from loving thy neighbor as thyself. Only that which enables the individual also to bear the cross, even as he, will enable that individual to know that peace which encompassed him in such a measure that he broke the bonds of death, overcame hell and the grave, and rose in a newness of life, that you, here and now, might know that peace in these troubled periods. Contentment is the greatest boon in man's whole experience. While storms and trials are necessary in every soul, as we see manifested in nature, only in contentment does growth make manifest. Not contentment to that point of satisfaction, for a satisfied mind or soul ceases to seek. But only in contentment may it receive and give out. In giving does a soul grow. With his peace there comes contentment, no matter what may be the vicissitudes of life. The greater an individual, the more content the individual may be. Not as an animal that is satisfied with the body filled, but rather that contentment which is seen in the acts of those that bring joy with the expression of themselves. As a bird in song, a bird in flight, an animal in the care of its young. That is contentment, the other lethargy. If the ideal is prompted by truth, it will bring contentment, peace, harmony, and the like. And unless it does bring that, know that error lies at the door. Time, space, and patience. Time, space, and patience, then, are those channels through which man as a finite mind may become aware of the infinite. For each phase of time, each phase of space is dependent as one atom upon another. And there is no vacuum, for this, as may be indicated in the universe, is an impossibility with God. Then there is no time, there is no space, when patience becomes manifested in love. In the consciousness of eternity, time is not, neither is space. In man's consciousness there appears so much mercy, so much love that these have been called time and space. God is in the material experience of man, time, space, patience. Man's concept of the Godhead is three-dimensional: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The communication or the activity or the motivating force we find is three-dimensional: time, space, and patience. Patience is the most beautiful virtue. Neither of these exists in fact, except in the concept of the individual as it may apply to time or space or patience. Time and space are the elements of man's own concept of the infinite and are not realities. As a tree, a rose, a bird, an animal. We define for this entity what we mean by the entity having patience, in an active, positive manner and not merely as a passive thing. Taking or enduring hardships, or censure, or idiosyncrasies of others, is not necessarily patience at all. It may become merely that of being a drudge, not only to self, but an outlet of expression from others that may never be quite satisfying because there is no resistance. Passive patience, to be sure, has its place, but consider patience rather from the precepts of God's relationship to man. Love unbounded is patience. Love manifested is patience. Endurance at times is patience. Consistence ever is patience. Patience, the most beautiful of all virtues and the least understood. Remember, it is one of the phases or dimensions through which thy soul may catch the greatest and more beautiful glimpse of the Creator. As the teacher of old has given, in patience possess you your souls. This does not mean in bearing with individuals that willfully disobey, but rather being strong and steadfast and humble in the sight of higher forces. Yet active in that known to be not only duty in the spiritual sense, but duty in the mental and material sense. Patience, long-suffering, and endurance cease to be a virtue when the entity allows self merely to be imposed upon, and to take second place merely because someone else of a more aggressive nature imposes. Long-suffering does not mean suffering of self and not grumbling about it. Rather, though you be persecuted, unkindly spoken of, taken advantage of by others, you do not attempt to fight back or to do spiteful things. that you be patient first with self, then with others. If one smite thee on the one cheek, did he say withdraw? No, rather turn the other. Be active in thy patience. Be active in thy relationships with thy fellow man. Not a tolerance that becomes timid, this would make rebellion in self. Not a patience that is not positive. Not humbleness that becomes morbid or lacking in beauty. For as orderliness is a part of thy being, so let consistency, as persistency, be a part of thy being. Persistency is very well, but consistency is indeed a jewel. Self-control. Patience doesn't mean patience in the sense of just submissiveness or just being quiet, but an active patience, conscious of being patient with self and with others. Force self to do some unpleasant things that it hasn't wanted to do once in a while, and like it. Patience is meekness in action, pureness in heart. While the body is subject to all the influences of materiality, it may be controlled, the emotions thereof, by the mind. And the mind may be directed by the spirit. The conquering of self is truly greater than were one to conquer many worlds. Be consistent in all thou doest, and when thou hast conquered self, thou mayest be able to govern another. In the accomplishment of good, self must first be conquered and put in submission to the will of the giver, the omnipotent force as is manifested through the various phases of those experiences, in which the oneness in him is made one with him, the all. This is what was meant by the command to the individual soul to be fruitful, to multiply, to subdue the earth. Too oft does the individual apply this only to secular or sexual associations, when it has nothing whatsoever to do with such in the spiritual or mental self, but has to do with the spiritual and mental in controlling, in governing self, self's appetites, self's desires, self's impatience, self's willfulness. Thus does one multiply. Thus does one subdue the influences of materiality. Forgiving and forgetting. The soul that holds resentment owes the soul to whom it is held much. Hast thou forgiven the wrong done thee? Then thou owest not. Who gains by being forgiven and by forgiving? The one that forgives is Lord even of him that he forgive. When individuals hold a grudge, they are fighting the God within themselves against the God within the individual or soul for whom or towards whom such is held. To not forgive would be giving way to self in such a manner as to become even worse than those that in a moment of self-delusionment gave way, or bring this disturbance. Only as you forgive those who blame thee without a cause, who have spoken vilely of thee without reason, can the giver of life and light forgive thee. The smile of understanding. Then how forgiving art thou? Answer this, and you will know just how you have been forgiven. It is the law, it is the Lord, it is love. Though you may be reviled, revile not again. Though you may be spoken of harshly, smile, smile. For it is upon the river of life that smiles are made. Not grins, but the smile of understanding cheers on the hearts of those who are discouraged, who are disheartened. It costs so little, it does so much good and lifts the burdens of so many. It is by thy smile and not a word spoken, that the day may be brighter for many a soul, and in making the day brighter, even for the moment, you have contributed to the whole world of affairs. Know that a smile will rally many to thy cause, while a frown would drive all away. Smile and the world smiles with you, frown and it turns its back on you. A smile gains entrance into the confidences of individuals when reprimands bring little but resentments. Smile even though it takes the hide off, even when you are cross. Be happy and glad. Smile though the heavens fall. And though the best friend deceive thee, and though thine own loved ones forsake thee. The smile of understanding the ability to laugh. Know that thy Lord, thy God, laughed even at the cross. Man alone in God's creation is given the ability to laugh. Don't think a grouchy man can ever raise a headed cabbage or a tomato that will agree as well as those raised by a man who laughs and tells a good joke, though it may be smutty. If you lose the ability to laugh, you lose that ability to be joyous. And the religion, the principle of the Christ life is joyous. For remember, he laughed even on the way to Calvary, not as pictured so oft, but laughed even at those that tormented him. This is what angered them most. See the funny side, don't be too serious. Remember, he even made a joke as he walked to the garden to be betrayed. Remember, he looked with love upon his disciple that denied him, even as he stood alone. Laugh under the most straining circumstance. See, the ridiculous side of every question, the humor in same. Remember that a good laugh is good for the body, physically, mentally. Humor. See not only the sublime things in life, but the humor, the wit, yes, the ridiculous also, that may be drawn from the cynic as well as the pessimist, as in cartoons and the like. See the humor in any experience, whether it is the most sacred, the most cherished experience, or that which comes as a trial. Question: should I keep going to the same doctors? If you want to die. Question: how much better am I? 100%. Question: which shoulder should be taped? The one that's hurt. Question: would it be better for the body to remain in bed without moving about? It'll move when you give it the castor oil. Question: have I ever contacted my husband in any other experience? He bought you. Doesn't he act like it at times? Hide not skeletons in thine own closet, for they will rattle when you least expect them. Friendship, companionship, and loneliness. Remember, the ability to attain to good companionship is to be capable of being interested in and to acquaint self with all phases of experiences of those with whom you come in contact. Few individual souls really enjoy the companionship of themselves, not merely because they love themselves the less or that they despise themselves the more, but their thoughts and things, and the emotions of the body, are seldom in accord one with the other, or their individuality and personality don't reflect the same shadow in the mirror of life. Fortunate indeed is the entity who has applied or may so apply self as to find self good company. Loneliness is destructive, yet in him you may find companionship. Question: how can the entity best overcome loneliness? Fill the life with the interests of others. Creation is God's desire for companionship and expression. Sentiment and friendship are indeed different. One desires, the other fulfills. Friendships are only the renewing of former purposes, ideals. Friendship. Count thy friends as the greatest of thy opportunities. No soul may have so many friends that it can afford to lose a single one. Yet there are obligations, there are duties that are combined with such associations. These never neglect in thy thought or thy activities. Friendships beget friendships, love begets love. Making self beautiful is to be beautiful in the lives of others. Torments, trials, and temptations. Only in disillusion and suffering, in time, space, and patience, does he come to the wisdom that his real will is the will of God, and in its practice is happiness and heaven. The spirit is continually at war with the flesh. And when an individual so attunes the mental, the spiritual life, as not to be in accord with that element within self that demands as much recognition as the purely material body, then one must know that there must be the price paid in that of discontent, of disruption. Question: will we be punished by fire and brimstone? Each entity's heaven or hell must, through some experience, be that which it has builded for itself. Is thy hell one that is filled with fire or brimstone? But no, each and every soul is tried so as by fire, purified, purged, for he, though he were the Son, learned obedience through the things he suffered. all are tried as in the fires of self. For he has not willed that any soul should perish, but has with every temptation, every trial, prepared a way of escape. And they that are his, he will not allow to be tempted beyond that they are able to bear. Through error, through rebellion, through contempt, through hatred, through strife, it became necessary then that all pass under the rod, tempted in the fires of flesh, purified, that they may be fit companions for the glory that may be thine. From what may anyone be saved? Only from themselves, that is, their individual hell. They dig it with their own desires. Doubts and fears and desires and disturbances burn and burn, yet all must be tried so as by fire. And the fires of the flesh in their activity in material associations must be purified in the love. As he struggled alone with his own cross, so you, as you struggle, have the assurance that his presence abideth. Keep you the faith in not the cross as sacrifice but as the cross as the way, as the light, the life. For without the cross there is not the crown. Without the cross there is no crown. Without the bitter there is no sweet. Without love you are lost indeed. The way of the cross is not easy, yet it is the tuneful, the rhythmic, the beautiful, the lovely way. If these hardships are held continually as crosses, or as things to overcome, then they will remain as crosses. But if they are to be met with the spirit of truth and right in their own selves, they should create joy, for that is what will be built. They who would gain the greater will suffer the more. In suffering strength is gained. His love faileth not to sustain those that put their trust in him. And though he slay thee, though he break thee as flax upon the wheel, though he bestir thee to the depths of despair, know thy Redeemer liveth, and thou shalt see him. And he shall purify thee in those things that thou doest that are lovely unto thy fellow man. The weaknesses in the flesh are the scars of the soul. The entity has in itself will, that knowledge, that understanding, with which the entity exercises its choice, to which it adds either for the satisfying or gratifying of self's emotions or self's desires, or for the magnifying and glorifying of the spiritual sources or help. These may be one, if the entity makes the hope, the desire of the body, the mind, the soul in accord. Yet the soul ever seeks to magnify or glorify the divine. Hence the constant warring that one finds in members, body, mind, soul. Those are as the reel of the shadows of appetites, of desires, of those things that are habits of body and that take hold as a habit. Yet who ever saw a habit? For it is a mental thing and is personal. Its individuality may be of the creative forces or of the destructive forces. Through trials, trouble, tribulations, one arrives at the best things in life, and the trials are forgotten. So long as there remains within self's own mind that of indecision, or that anything will do, then, necessarily, will the body put up with anything will do and nothing becoming definite. But making the definite decision, the definite choice as to what direction this activity is to be given, will make for opening of channels. First there must be a determination within self as to what is to be the activities, whether sweeping streets, running engines, motors, flying machines, digging ditches, or what. But choose, and then stick to that. It's the only way that those abilities that are latent may be developed in any entity. Know that there are those realms wherein there is as much confusion as there is in the material world, unless the ideal that is ever creative in its purpose is the directing influence. Only that which is temporal causes confusion, for that which is eternal is the straight way. Self-indulgence or self-aggrandizement can only bring confusion, whether it be in the spiritual, mental, or physical self. But if you are attempting to have thy physical doing just as it pleases, thy mental body controlled by what will other people say, and the spiritual body and mind shelved only for good occasions and for the good impressions that you may make occasionally, there cannot be other than confusion, Few does power not destroy. Few does power not destroy. Man's answer to everything has been power, power of money, power of position, power of wealth, power of this, that, or the other. When Alexander sought to conquer the world, the tenets of the ideal were forgotten in the desires of the flesh. And while the principles as set forth in the mind and heart of the man as the student under Plato and Archimedes, and Aurelius and others, the man became so gorged by the greed of power as to become the loathsome body, as it passed to its reward for the use of the power as given into the hands. For as given, be faithful and subdue the world. All power is given through knowledge and understanding. Do not abuse that power lest it turns again and rends the perpetrator of such conditions. Being afraid is the first consciousness of sins entering in, for he that is made afraid hath lost consciousness of self's own heritage with the Son. For we are heirs through him to that kingdom that is beyond all of that would make afraid or that would cause a doubt. Self-awareness, selfishness, is that makes men afraid. The awareness of the necessities of the carnal forces in a material world seeking their gratification. Peace is with thee, contentment is in thine hand. Who becomes not afraid but trusts rather in him. Self-awareness, self-consciousness brings fear and doubt. Fear is the root of most of the ills of mankind, whether of self, or of what others think of self, or how self will appear to others. To overcome fear is to fill the mental, spiritual being with that which wholly casts out fear, the love manifest in the world through him. Perfect love casteth out fear. Where fear enters, there sin lieth at the door. For he or she that is without fear is free indeed. It is the fear of the unknown that first makes fear. Fear is as the fruit of indecisions respecting that which is lived and that which is held as the ideal. Doubt is as the father of fear. Fear is as the beginning of faltering. Faltering is as that which makes for dis-ease throughout the soul and mental body. As he gave, that which I feared has come upon me, Job. In nature and in the animal instincts we find only the expressions of a universal consciousness of hope, and never of fear, save created by man in his indulging in the gratification of material appetites. Worry in its last analysis is that of fear. Anger. Do not burden self with that as is unnecessary to be met until the time arises, for worry killeth. Labor strengthens. Never worry as long as you can pray. When you can't pray, you'd better begin to worry. For then you have something to worry about. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but the fear of man is the indication of weakness in the body man. Worry and fear being the greatest foes to normal healthy physical body, turning the assimilated forces in the system into poisons that must be eliminated, rather than into life-giving vital forces. Be mad and sin not. Righteous anger is a virtue. He that has no temper is very weak, but he who controls not his temper is much worse. One that may control self in anger is beginning the first lessons or laws of experience, disliking that which would produce such a feeling within self, yet able to love the soul of one that causes or produces such a state of feeling. This is patience and love. When little petty disturbances call for the quick retort, find rather the fault in self, if there be one. Then, if there is not, according to thy standard that is set in thine ideal, open not thy mouth, even as he did not when railed upon. Be angry, but sin not, means there has been lost rather the desire of exaltation. When anger hath beset thee, hast thou stopped and considered what the fruit of rash words would bring? Anger can destroy the brain as well as any disease, for it is itself a disease of the mind. No one can be jealous and allow the anger of same and not have upset digestion or heart disorder. While, to be sure, one without some fire, some determination, some exercising of self's will is worth little, but one unable to control self, or to control temper, is worse than one that has none, or becomes as an individual pushed hither and thither by every circumstance, every condition that may contact, becoming gradually as one with no stability. But controlling same, one may build that as will be a revolution or evolution of self's own abilities. Not that the entity in its meekness is not capable of being fired by emotions even to madness or anger. These are well, for they that are not capable of becoming emotional over their own ideas and ideals are very lax, but those who may not control same are in a sad plight indeed. Vengeance and hate. No man is bigger than that which makes him lose his temper. The entity is one, then, who has learned to hold the temper, and yet not entirely suppressed in doing so, or by the needs of such. Rather being able to gain from same, through the very virtue of patience and long-suffering. Often those who flare up quickly, also forgive quickly, if they remain as little children asking, seeking, living, guide thou me, O God, in the steps I take and in the words I say day by day. The spirit of hate, the Antichrist, is contention, strife, fault-finding, lovers of self, lovers of praise. Just as hate and animosity and hard sayings create poisons in the body, so do they weaken and wreck the mind. Attitudes oft influence the physical conditions of the body. No one can hate his neighbor and not have stomach or liver trouble. That you dwell upon, that you become, just as that you hate suddenly befalls thee. This is natural law. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, Romans. Judging and fault-finding. Hence those who attempt to get even, or who would stand for their rights irrespective of what may be brought for others will find disturbing forces in their experience in the material sojourns. He who swears vengeance pays even unto the last farthing. For when there is jealousy, hate, things that do not make the soul of man free, these bring retardments to an individual. See only the pure, the good, for until you are able to see within the life and activities of those you have come to hate the most, something you would worship in thy Creator, you haven't begun to think straight. Look for good and you will find it. Search for it is as a pearl of great price. For there is so much good in the worst, that you may never judge another by thine own short standards. There is so much good in the worst of us, and so much bad in the best of us, it doesn't behoove any of us to speak evil of the rest of us. Judge not lest you be judged, Luke. Who are you to judge what the other would do? Hast thou been in the same position, in the same place? Are thine own purposes and desires pure? In wisdom thou wilt not find fault. In wisdom thou wilt not condemn any. In wisdom thou wilt not cherish grudges. In wisdom thou wilt love those, even those that despitefully use thee. Speak gently, speak kindly to those who falter. You know not their own temptations, nor the littleness of their understanding. Judge not as to this or that activity of another. Rather pray that the light may shine even in their lives as it has in thine. You have the ability to judge things. It is well to judge things, it is bad to judge yourself or your fellow man. When we see rather him that we worship even in the faults of others, then we are at the beginning of patience. In patience condemn not, neither find fault. Not condonning, not agreeing, but let thine own life so shine that others, seeing thy patience, knowing thy understanding, comprehending thy peace, may take hope. Anyone can find fault. It is the wise person who finds that which encourages another in the turmoils and strifes of the day. Learn the lesson well of the spiritual truth. Criticize not unless you wish to be criticized. For, with what measure you meet it is measured to thee again. It may not be in the same way, but you cannot even think bad of another without it affecting thee in a manner of a destructive nature. Think well of others, and if you cannot speak well of them, don't speak. But don't think it either. Try to see self in the other's place. The magnifying of virtues in others and the minimizing of faults is the beginning of wisdom in dealing with others. Not that the evil influence is denied, rather that force within self is stressed, which when called upon is so powerful that those influences about self may never hinder. The kind word turneth away wrath, even as the haughty look or the unkind word stirreth up and mocketh for troubles. Know this, and never forget it, that it is the spirit with which a thing is said that carries the force or power. That one cannot endure within itself it finds as a fault in others. That thou findest as a fault in others is thine own greatest fault ever. As given of old, each soul shall give an account of every idle word spoken. It shall pay every whit. Think twice before you speak once. Hold thy tongue from gossip, then, oft, and think what you would like to have said about thee if circumstances were reversed. Self-condemning. Of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh, Matthew, and all nature hath been tamed, but the tongue hath no man tamed. It may be stilled in the earth, but that it has spoken goes on and on. The attitude in the home should be rather in loving action and word that the differences be pointed out, rather than by contention, abuse, or any word or act that condemns anyone for their activity. Those that find fault with others will find fault in themselves, for they are writing their own record. Condemning of self is as much of an error as condemning others. While selflessness is the law, to belittle self is a form of selfishness and not selfless. Think not more highly of thyself than you ought to think, yet no one will think more of you than you do yourself. The entity pities self, and an individual soul that begins to pity self soon finds fault with others and forgets the real freedom. The entity is more tolerant with others than with self. The usual, of course, is to excuse self and blame others. It is error to sit still, as we have oft indicated, do something, but never find fault, and do not condemn self for being this or that. Just do with thy might what thy hands find to do. Learn to live with self, and you will learn to live with others. Fear not, for fear brings that of contempt first from those that bring same, and then the seed is the dissatisfaction in self, and condemnation of self's position. Question: how can I overcome the terrible timidity in speaking with people? Do not attempt to overcome. Rather let the speaking come as from the heart in a service to others. Vainglory. Self-exaltation damns more souls than anything save vainglory and selfishness. Selflessness is the greater tolerance. For when self seeks exaltation, beware. You that seek self-glory know its hardships. You that seek the glory of the Father know its beauties. Humbleness does not mean degrading nor becoming discouraged when self has been refused that which according to the principles of self is defaced by those that should be, are in the position to be. Helpful experiences in the affairs of the entity. Question: why is the thought always with me to kill myself? Self-condemnation. For not enough of that seeking to manifest God's will has been manifested. When this thought occurs, let thy prayer be as indicated: Lord, here am I thine. Use me in those ways and manners as thou sayest, that I may ever glorify thee. Question: why is suicide considered wrong? So long as there are those that depend upon the body. And how hath it been given? No man liveth to himself, no man dieth to himself. No man hath been so low that some soul hath not depended upon, relied upon same for strength. Thus we find while there may be those experiences, these are rather of a selfish nature. Question: when I desire death more than life, how can I use my will? When desire for death and desire for life is presented, what is it that makes the life go on? The will. The spiritual life, the essence of God itself. Would the body be so weak as to crucify that it worships, rather than that which is only tagged on in desires? Think on these things. Make thy life one with his love. When such desires, such thoughts, even, find lodgment, look about self and see the struggle so many souls are making to keep body and soul together. How hast thou in any manner ministered to making their burden lighter? In lightening the burden of another thine own is lightened twofold. In lightening the burdens of another the whole of will's power is strengthened manyfold. She lost in soul development, for she took her own life to satisfy self, not in defense of principle, self, country, or position. An individual that may be termed more spiritual-minded than material-minded, and this is the nicest one can say of an entity. Let him that is weak of mind or heart not take the handle, for he that plougheth and looketh back is worse than the infidel. Weakness is only strength misapplied or used in vain ways. Only those who seek become aware of that which is the motivative force of any condition, phase or stage of development in the spiritual, the mental or the material. Even the toad is as beautiful in the sight of the Creator as the lily, and he that heedeth not the little things may not be master of the great things. For he that was capable of using the talents in the little way was made ruler over great cities. One had best be active and in error than not doing anything. There is progress whether you are going forward or backward. The thing is to move. Take things, conditions and circumstances where they are, not merely where you wishfully think, hope or desire that they are. Keep the heart singing. Keep the mind clear. Keep the face toward the light. The shadows then are behind. Do ever in self that thou knowest to be right, though it may make of self even an outcast to thy neighbor. It is never right to do that which is evil that good may come. Know that in whatever state you find thyself, that, at the moment, is best for thee. Better to trust one heart and that deceiving, than doubt one heart which if believing would bless thy life with true understanding. Remember, that which would be ideal for self must also be that which would be ideal for others. Then, self must become selfless, and not in any form or manner desire those things that would be advantageous over others in that others would have to suffer, for that is selfishness, and not selflessness. And selflessness is that to which each entity, each soul, must attain through the varied experiences in the material plane. One who has a soul has a psychic power, but remember, there are no shortcuts to God. You are there, but self must be eliminated. We correct habits by forming others. That's everybody. Know that each soul constantly meets its own self. No problem may be run away from. Meet it now. No fault, no hurt comes to self save that thou hast created in thine consciousness, in thine inner self, the cause. For only those that you love may hurt you. No nation, no individual is stronger than the weakest habit. Make life, make God, a practical thing. Do not attempt to be good, but rather good for something. Ever be a worker, as the bee, yes, but in that way in which it is ever a contribution to making thy portion of the earth a more beautiful place for men to live in. You never lose anything that really belongs to you, and you can't keep that which belongs to someone else. No matter if this spiritual, mental, or material, the law is the same. Know that what is truly thine cannot be taken away from thee, nor is any character ever lost. Know, the earth and all therein is the Lord's. All thine own is lent thee, not thine but lent thee. Keep it inviolate. Don't preach one thing and practice another. For this is inconsistent, and inconsistency is sin. Make concessions only to the weak. Defy the strong if thou art in the wrong. Arguments will seldom change the aspects or views of any. And truth itself needs no champion, for it is of itself champion of champions. It is much easier to refrain from error, in speech or in activity, than to seek forgiveness for the word quickly spoken. Think no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. It is the spirit with which you do a thing, the purpose that brings weal or woe in its effect in the experience. Most of us think we need a great deal more than we do. An entity should comprehend and know, and never forget, that life and its experiences are only what one puts into same. It is the little things in the association one with another that build those that prove to be the real experiences of the life. A word, a look, a sign may undo all of the thoughts of many. To fulfill that purpose for which an entity, a being, has manifested in matter is the greater service that can possibly be rendered. Is the oak lord over the vine? Is the Jimson weed beset before the tomato? Are the grassy roots ashamed of their flower beside the rose? All those forces in nature are fulfilling rather those purposes to which their Maker, their Creator, has called them into being, reflecting, as each soul, as each man and each should do in their particular sphere, their concept of their Maker,